You're listening to the Plane Talking UK podcast, the UK-based podcast written by a passenger for anyone. And here are your hosts, Carla Stebbings, Matt Smith and Neville Bounds.
Well, hello and welcome to episode number 189 of the Plane Talking UK podcast. I'm Carl Stebbings, and joining me live in the kitchen studio this week is my co-host Matt Smith.
As opposed to unlive, I suppose.
To unlive.
On tape, yeah.
I know,
okay, yeah.
I know.
Hello, everyone. Hello, welcome.
Hello. How are we all?
He's a little stressed at the moment.
Why are you stressed, Matt?
Because I'm getting on an aeroplane in a very short period of time.
It is
I
actually
am
a very
off
short time.
To the States.
He's off to New York, guys and girls.
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
Smith is off to New York for well, it's business.
It is actually business. I am actually going there, believe it or not, to work. My new job is flying me and the boss and my colleague Charlotte, who is the other boss, and we're all off to New York to a vet show, a veterinary show.
Is there going to be animals there?
Well, I hope not. No,
Okay.
Absolutely. No, we tend to deal with them afterwards.
Okay.
With what we sell.
Okay.
But anyway, enough of that.
All right. So you're going out there for
Yes.
it, but you're also going to hopefully meet up with some of our listeners and
absolutely.
some fellow APGers, I think.
Indeed, yes. I think David Abbey and that Micah I'm hopefully meeting when I get there.
Ooh,
and
lucky you.
Owen's already there. So meeting Owen when we get there. In fact, we've got
Yeah.
a piece from Owen later on while he was in the Dublin Air Lounge, I think, waiting
good.
for his flight. So,
Good, I like
so
that.
yes, very exciting. And yes, lots of people asking me in the chat room, am I going on a 757? No, I am not. Not in a million years will you ever find me on a 757 ever again. No, I'm going on a 767 this time, so it's the bigger one with the three seats and the two either side. So
a wide
forward to
body.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's going to be spoiled, I think, this time.
Yes.
Let's
hope
hopefully.
so. Yes.
And I am, well, I've got my suitcases down. I haven't packed yet, but we will be off to Dubai next Thursday, flying next Thursday.
It's very strange. We're so like
time.
jet set this week.
I
It's
know,
just ridiculous.
I know. But that does mean that next week we're still trying to plan exactly how we're going to run a show next week. We will still bring out a show. Don't panic, everyone. We're still
working out the finer points.
We're trying to find out exactly how we are going to do a live show. So
did you not have your phone on silent,
no,
Carlos?
I didn't.
Did you not? Right. Okay.
And I shall shout at whoever just tried to phone
anyway,
me.
carry on. Yeah.
Oh, it's Sky.
It's an 0800
It's
number.
spam.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's
okay.
Sky.
Right.
It's
Anyway,
Sky.
moving on.
So moving on. But anyway, getting back to the show.
Yes.
We do have a very special guest indeed joining us on the show tonight. It's his first time on the show. And he is the guy who puts together some amazing classic airliner DVDs. He runs his own company, Avion, which produces these amazing DVDs using archive footage of some pretty amazing and fabulous jets and prop liners from around the world from days gone by using Cinefilm, of all things. So,
lovely.
I mean, for me, I can't remember Cinefilm. I think I go back as far as the Sony Video 8 tapes, I think, if I remember. That's as far as I go.
Right, okay.
So we're going to welcome on to this show and I'll give a warm welcome from the chat room to Howard Asbridge.
Thanks very much. Hello, everybody.
And how are you, Howard? Are you well?
Fine. I'm waiting to see myself appear on the YouTube screen. It looks very blue on your TV.
Yeah.
But, no, there we are. Yeah, that's good.
See,
sorry about the cardboard boxes behind me, folks, but if you haven't bought all the DVDs, they've got to go somewhere.
Well, that's true, yes. See, this is the problem that I'm going to be up against with this show, because we actually have somebody who knows what they're doing when it comes to cameras and all this kind of thing, not the amateur that is me trying to set it all up here in the studio. So, yes, it's unfortunately, because we're using Skype, obviously, we can't quite get the images that one would hope from it. But we are working, thanks to your marvellous Patreon donations, we have actually got a new system that's going to be going in place in the next few weeks once I get back from my holidays, basically. My work-related trip. Sorry.
Yeah. So we've got loads of news and stuff to get through, but later on in the show, after the various segments we've got from Nev, and we've also got one from Owen as well, and a bit from Micah, we're going to have a good chat with Howard, and Howard's going to explain to us the finer details as to how he puts these DVDs together, because they are amazing. Awesome. And for those of you who do follow us on Facebook, I did put the links on the Facebook page to take you across to Howard's website, so you can see the bits and pieces on there and look at what he does.
Everybody's asking me in the chat room, by the way, what flight am I going on? And for all those wanting to stalk me, I think it's UA15.
Yes.
And says that is my outbound flight there. And it's apparently not just a 767, but a 400 for Matt. Is a Dash 400 good? I don't know.
What's that? The
767-400.
Oh, the 400 is good. Yeah, Delta.
Yeah, very good.
Oh, really? Oh, excellent. Oh, thank goodness for that.
It's as close as you can get to 777.
Oh, okay.
Basically.
Oh, right. Okay. Anyway, should we do some news?
Well, before we start, we're going to have a quick apologies from
Of
Nev,
course, yeah.
because Nev couldn't be on the show this week.
Because he's
Nev
got birthday leave.
He's got
basically.
birthday
Yeah.
leave. We thought we'd give Nev a week off because he had his time. And for business, he went.
He
on
did,
trip,
yes,
but
yes.
he's on holiday now with Miss Nev. Mrs.
Trying
Nev.
desperately not to get stabbed, I think, where he was last week, by the sound of it. But
he's in better climes. He's in Tenerife, I think. Now, Nev is,
Forteventura.
Forteventura, that's it. Yeah. So hello to you, Nev, if you are watching or listening. Hello to you, Nev. Hope you're having a lovely holiday with Mrs. Nev, and we look forward to having you back on the show soon.
Next week, hopefully.
Because
I might not be here.
So, yeah, you might not be here.
Okay.
Quick update for those of you guys who might be attending with the 200th show, which is next year on the 20th of January. All the places for the 200th show are now full.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I know we had one left, but that's obviously gone in the week, is it?
We have filled all 30 places for the 200th show. So that's good news. Unfortunately, if you've missed the time.
Lane Street says, pish posh, Nev is busy recuperating from all that Brazilian rum.
Oh, it probably is. But we've got that to look forward to next year. I'm really looking forward to the 200th show. We've got some people flying in from all around the world.
We have the States and all sorts.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So we are going to start the show then, as we do each week, with our rundown of the weekly news from around the world and the UK. So if you're ready, Matt.
I am, yes.
And if you're ready, Howard.
Sure.
Let's go. So, kicking off this week's first news story, this one is on the CNBC.com website. And the headline is, "Forget your checked luggage, this airline is weighing passengers." So, Finnair is conducting voluntary weigh-ins at its Helsinki airport.
As you do.
As you do. And they're asking for volunteers not to take a later flight, but to step on a scale before boarding the plane. The Finnish airline told CNBC that it has asked around 180 passengers to weigh in before flights from Helsinki airport this week, and it needs about 2,000 travellers to get an accurate read on passengers' weights and their carry-ons. The study will continue through to spring 2018, and Finnair said because it wants to collect data when travellers are carrying heavy winter coats and when they are travelling lighter in warmer weather. The information will be kept anonymous, the airline has said. The aim of the weigh-ins, which might be more familiar to travellers who have flown on small aircraft, is to update nearly a decade-old data on average passenger weights as it expands its route networks, and it needs to accurately forecast payloads and how much fuel it requires. They say we have a strong safety culture at Finnair and are also very data-driven organisations, so we want to ensure we have the best possible data in our use for the aircraft performance and loading calculations, Finnair said. The airline said it, like other carriers using European Safety Agency data from 2009, which lists a standard weight, including carry-on luggage, this is including carry-on luggage, for a male passenger at 88 kilograms or 194 pounds, or 70 kilograms, 154 pounds, for a female passenger, and 35 kilograms or 77 pounds for a child. Wow, that definitely needs updating.
I mean, there is a scary thing that I don't know. Is because did you say it was 90 kilos or something? What was considered the average for
average for a male? 88 kilos.
Yeah, I mean that probably
including carry-on luggage.
Let's be honest, we're all perhaps carrying a little bit more weight than we should be these days. I wonder. I can see why they're updating it. Yeah, thin air. Jenny is suggesting as one way of rebranding said airline. I like that. Yes, this is good.
I think when you see the size of some of the carry-ons that people take on board aircraft, they probably weigh
a person. Yeah,
a person
absolutely.
anyway, yeah.
I think the Italians are quite famous for being very precious about their
You shouldn't
luggage.
say that. We've got Jenny in the chat.
No, I
room.
know. Well, no, she's
I know.
not. She's she just lives there. She's a Norfolk girl through and through. That's what it is. Yeah.
What do you think of this then, Howard? Are you a regular traveller on aircraft? Do you take a large carry-on or small carry-on case?
I think it doesn't matter how often you go on an aircraft. You're all there, you're ready to go, the door's not shut, and then someone will come on and try and get something the size of a sort of camping fridge. And instead of taking them away and putting both them and the fridge in the hold, they then rearrange the entire overhead to try and get it in. And seriously, when you're in the queue, you're just amazed at the stuff. I mean, my wife and I are so law-abiding, we kind of measure the thing. She doesn't know whether she can take a handbag as well as a carry-on and so on. And then you've got someone in front of you with a rucksack that can hold, a family of 4.
Yeah, this is it. And of course, I know from conversations we've had with, we're lucky enough that we have several sort of friends of the show who are sort of cabin crew and pilots. And one of the things that they always say is the delays that are caused by people trying to get these oversized bags on and things. I mean, it's just, as you say, if we were all as law-abiding as Howard and then his wife, basically, I don't think any of these delays would exist, really. I mean, you're very good, aren't you, Carlos? Because you're forever weighing your stuff before you goes out.
I've got a set of digital scales, which I
just literally
weigh the case and hand luggage case whenever we go.
Yeah, this is it.
Or you can go back to the Russian system, where I think it was the IL-62, the IL-86 had a room in which the passengers deposited their luggage, their carry-on. So they were used to people carrying huge amounts of stuff. There was a separate part of the plane that you put your hand luggage in.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's the 86.
And it makes sense, really, doesn't it? I don't know. It's just. We're just not very good at doing as we're told, I think, really. But I mean, it's raising lots of questions about, sort of secretly weighing everyone before, he's like, we'll weigh you, but we won't tell anyone.
But they do. It's true. The story's right. They do need to update these.
They do,
these
figures, because these are very old figures, aren't they?
Yeah.
This makes perfect sense. Anyway, we'll move on to the next story now.
This is a good news story for you, for a change.
Right.
For a change.
I'll be the judge of that. Thank you. This is on the independent.co.uk. So it is, for a change, a quality newspaper, and its story 2, as it always seems to be, is a Ryanair story, and the headline is Ryanair passenger numbers increased by 8% year-on-year in October despite cancelling thousands of flights. Ryanair saw passenger traffic increase by 8% year-on-year in October despite cancelling thousands of flights in September. Last month, 11.8 million customers used the airline, up to 10.9 million in October 2016, it announced on Thursday. Meanwhile, this load factor, a measurement of how full planes are, was up by 1% year-on-year to 96%. That's a crazy payload, isn't it? 96% of all flights full. That's brilliant. Ryanair's Chief Marketing Officer, Kenny Jacobs, said the figures take into account the flight cancellations that were announced in September. Around 20,000 flights were stopped due to a pilot rostering failure. That's an interesting way of putting it, a pilot rostering failure. The company's annual traffic to October also grew 12% to 128.2 million customers, while a perfect storm of one-off pilot shortages cost Ryanair 25 million euros, or 22 million pounds sterling. That really shows how bad our exchange rate is at the moment, doesn't it? In compensation payments, it enjoyed strong half-year results. On Tuesday, it posted an 11% rise in net profit for the first half of 2017. It said its forecast for full-year profit after tax for the year end of March 2018 is at least 1.4 billion euros. So I think it's safe to say that they're doing rather well.
I think even after the
debacle,
the issues that Ryanair had earlier this year, it just goes to prove that it doesn't really make any difference.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at the end of the day. It's just one of those things, isn't it?
Have you had the chance to fly Ryanair, Howard?
I think I have, yes. Tend to go more EasyJet than Ryanair.
Okay.
But I think in some ways we kind of feel, we've lost the romance of air travel, but in a way we sort of still expect it a bit. If you'd taken the story with the pilot shortage and made that, I don't know, Network Rail or National Express, a coach without the wings, you wouldn't really have been that fussed about it.
No,
and I think what you've got here is a near monopoly, or in fact an actual monopoly in lots of routes. And they've fouled up over the pilots, but then that's really a reflection of a worldwide shortage.
Agreed.
And at the end of the day, their scale of operation is such that I think that the total cost to them is over 100 million euros. I seem to have read somewhere recently. But it doesn't make any difference if you're turning in over €1 billion profit.
Yeah.
The share price hasn't really been that effective, I don't think.
Do you know, this is the one thing when all this was kicking off, actually, and I said to one of my friends, because he does a little bit of stocks and shares and things, and I was saying to him, you should really sort of just keep a close eye on Ryanair's share price, because if it does go down, obviously, whatever's going on, Ryanair will bounce back. It's not like they're about to go under as a result of all these things, because it's just such a huge airline now. And he was watching the figures, and he said it literally didn't even move half a percentage point the whole time. It just remained solid, their share price throughout the whole debacle.
The thing I regret is not buying IAG shares immediately after the Brexit decision, because they crashed, or went down a lot anyway.
Yeah. And
now IAG's profits are massive, and the share price has gone up incredibly.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. I mean, obviously, there have been sad stories of later. I use Monaco as an example,
sure.
But it is very unusual for the airline industry to have problems of this nature. Anyway, we shouldn't really talk about share prices. We're supposed to be talking about aviation.
Not that I got any shares anyway.
Yeah, no, indeed. Yeah, nobody could get any when they were going cheap. So
it's like complaining about winning the lottery and you don't buy the ticket.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I did. I brought a lucky dip ticket today.
You always do the lottery.
I know.
Yes.
So moving on to the next story, and Howard, this one is all for you.
Thanks. This is a story on inc.com, but actually I've come across it in other places too. And the kind of headline is shock horror. Emirates removing first class from their A380s. They're going to be carrying 615 people. But when you get down to it, actually all they're doing is quite sensible. They've got a lot of demand from the UK to Dubai around the Christmas period, and they are removing first class from some planes for some flights over that time, and presumably going to put them back afterwards. So it's must be a bit annoying for their PR people, but this really isn't anything more than just straightforward economics.
This is true. It's
because the capacity on the 380s is obviously huge. If you take out the first class and business class seats,
I think it's about 490 in a kind. I mean, there isn't such a thing as a standard configuration, is there? Because some of them have got a shop and all sorts of stuff. But I think it's around that. So it makes sense. But it isn't the end of first class on Emirates A380s.
No, indeed.
Because it is nice.
Is it? Well, as I say, those of you watching the YouTube video will actually see Jennifer Aniston. The very famous Jennifer Aniston video showing us how it's meant to be done.
Yeah, but that's something that we just don't experience, Matt, in economy.
No. You
certainly. So when you said it is nice, you didn't mean you've been there. You're not in the background on that video. It's just you've watched a video.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
I believe anything you see in a video.
Well,
I can put my hand up and say that Emirates business class is nice.
Now, who was it? Who is it that Dr. Steph flew with? Because she was in
Dr. Steph. She's in the chat room actually. Dr. Steph flew.
She'll tell us. Yeah.
Dr. Steph flew business with, I can't remember who it was now. She'll probably say in the chat room.
Because that looked pretty
But that looked really, really nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, I might just point out that Dr. Steph is at work at the moment.
Is she?
And she's watching us.
So she's saving many patients' lives whilst watching the drivel that we're putting out. Right. Okay, good. Yes.
But remember...
I'm a bit disappointed, by the way, because I'm going to be in New York. Oh, Etihad. My apologies, yes. I'm a bit disappointed because she's not running the New York Marathon and I'm going to be there watching it. I mean, honestly, how rude. Anyway, yes, sorry.
Okay.
Anyway, enough of my first world problems.
I know. Yeah. But I do plan on winning the lottery this weekend. So
bear us poor mere mortals in mind. I'm sure Howard will be up for a bit of a first class somewhere as well. I'm sure.
I'll treat you to premium economy on the way home, Matt.
Oh, that's very generous of you. I don't know how you live or sleep at night. Anyway,
the next story is on the USAtoday.com site. The headline: United's new 18-hour flight is longest ever by US airline. Ooh. So this is one of Brian Coleman's favourite airlines here, United Airlines.
We're not being horrible about them, are we? Because I'm flying on one of these tomorrow.
And for anyone who works for United, Matt is travelling with you tomorrow, and this story...
don't tell them that.
Anyway, United Airlines is now flying the longest regularly scheduled route ever flown by a US carrier, and one that is a contender for the title of the world's longest flying time.
Really? Oh.
The Chicago-based airline officially claimed those superlatives late Friday when it launched a non-stop service on the 8,700-mile route connecting Los Angeles and Singapore. By distance, it's not the world's longest, but it's close. Qatar Airways, or Qatar, the usual routine we go through. Qatar, 9,032 miles, and Emirates Dubai-Auckland route at 8,819 miles remain the two longest, as measured by the most direct non-stop routing between the cities served. By scheduling flying time, however, United's LAX Singapore is perhaps the world's longest. Facing typical strong headwinds on the westbound route, United's flight in the direction of Singapore has a whopping scheduled flying time of 17 hours and 55 minutes. Wow. That tops Qatar Airways published flying time of 17 hours and 40 minutes.
You realise we're going to get emails from Grant McCarran now, aren't we?
For its 9,032-mile flight from Auckland to New Zealand and Doha and Qatar. Qatar.
Oh, really?
A route that currently is regarded as the world's longest time. United's eastbound return to LA is scheduled for 15 hours and 15 minutes. So obviously got a bit of a tailwind on the way home. The Singapore-LA route is one of several ultra-long-haul routes announced by United during the past 2 years. Prior to Friday's launch of LA-Singapore flights, Qantas, their 8,500-mile route between Dallas-Fort Worth and Sydney had been the longest flight to or from the US. Among its domestic rivals, United already flew the longest non-stop route of any US airline, with an 8,446-mile route from San Francisco to Singapore that began in June 2016. So the route is going to be flown by a Dreamliner, obviously. They've got to have a decent aircraft on that route. As opposed to an Airbus. Anyway, so I do believe I listened to the Airplane Geeks last show, and I think that Brian Coleman is taking this flight.
Is he?
So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, as I say, listen to the Airplane Geeks to
to see
find
how he
out
got
more.
on. Yeah, we might have to have a chat with Brian. Actually, Nev could do a passenger experience with Brian see how he got on with this flight.
Absolutely.
But 18 hours. It wouldn't bother me, as we've said before on the show. Matt, I don't think you're that impressed by 18 hours.
I don't. I'm all right, thanks. Yeah, I'll live.
And I think we all agreed before that an 18-hour flight in first class or business would probably
be
good.
Fine. Yeah, I think even I could handle it. Anyway, moving on to the next story, and this is on the Metro. The headline is: Unaccompanied girl 7 managed to slip through security and board an EasyJet flight. A 7-year-old girl who had run away from home managed to slip through airport security to board an EasyJet flight. The girl slipped away from her parents' house in Geneva before catching a one-stop train to Geneva Airport at around 1:30 p.m. on Sunday. Although she was unaccompanied and did not have a ticket, the young child made it through security. The girl, who was wearing a blue jacket during her daring runaway, was reported missing by her father as soon as she realised she wasn't home. A search was launched in the local area and police were able to track the girl's movements via CCTV. The child was able to go through security and the lounge before sneaking through the departure gate and onto EasyJet flight EZS 1305 to Ajaccio in France. Wow. A spokesperson for EasyJet told the metro.co.uk that EasyJet can confirm that an unaccompanied child incorrectly boarded
Incorrectly
boarded. Flight EZS1305 from Geneva to France on Sunday, the 29th of October. The crew correctly identified the girl should not have been on board and immediately reported it to the police. We have taken this up with Geneva Airport and an investigation has been launched. EasyJet works closely with all of our airports to ensure the safety and security of all our passengers and staff. The safety and well-being of our passengers and crew is always EasyJet's number one priority. So actually, I mean, we're having a laugh at the EasyJet's expense, but actually credit to EasyJet for realising, because otherwise that'd be a very different story if she had actually got to France before somebody.
It's just the way it says she incorrectly boarded.
Yeah.
So what, did she sort of access the aircraft via the undercarriage?
Well, who knows? I mean, as it climbed up through the thing,
through the APU,
as you do.
What do you reckon about this one, Howard?
I think it's snuck on rather than incorrectly boarded would cover that.
Yeah.
But it does happen, doesn't it? Not so much that, but people with a ticket to somewhere that's got almost the same name as somewhere else.
Yeah, that's
being
true.
served by the same airline at the same time, get on a flight and find themselves in I can't think of two cities with the same name for the life of me. But you know what I mean? They end up in Atlanta instead of Berlin or whatever.
Well, of course, there is...
And it's just people are processing so much stuff all the time that the human brain overrides the system and lets people through when the computer says no.
Yeah, my concern really, this is my concern really is more with the airports. I mean, because obviously it's that system that sort of allowed her to get that far, if you like, and get airside before she was picked up. I mean, it's, as you say, I suppose, we aren't all infallible.
I understand she was not very tall. Was able to sort of go through a small gap.
Right. Yeah. Fair
point.
Literally
in security.
Yeah. Well,
between two cupboards,
like passport control and things. I mean, they all sit in these quite tall booths, don't they? I mean, it's.
If it's
a crowded area
and
stuff, I mean. I guess it would be very easy to sort of get away with sort of slipping through.
I'd love to be a small child again.
Yeah,
because I'd be running onboard aircraft.
Your days of being a small child are well and truly past you, I feel.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, on to the next story. This one is with you, Howard.
Sure. It's another EasyJet one, but actually it's really about Air Berlin. This is on the BBC News on the 30th of October. And EasyJet are buying up bits of Air Berlin that are at Tegel. I think I've got that right. I hope so. In Berlin. Landing slots and leases for 25 A320s. They're also taking on, and the quote here is 1,000 German pilots and cabin crew. Now, what you can't work out is the balance between pilots and cabin crew from that. But it'd be quite interesting if they've hired more pilots than they need for 25 A320s, because given Ryanair's current problems, that would be quite a smart move, really.
Well, yeah.
I think what this is really about is the kind of thing that should happen with insolvencies, where whoever's dealing with it is selling off the assets as they can, because the Lufthansa has already bought the Austrian element, Niki, haven't they? That's how it goes. The people who must be feeling sore are Etihad, who, according to this item, have declared they won't be providing any further financial support. I'm not surprised.
No, I bet.
The airline did get a loan from the German government, to carry on operating. And I was looking at the figures, and in 2016, they carried nearly 28 million passengers. So it's quite a big operation, compared with EasyJet, which is around about 74 million for the same time. Obviously much bigger, but nevertheless, something like that folding puts Monarch in a different part of the ballpark, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, very much so.
So anyway, EasyJet shares. Why am I doing shares all the time? I haven't got any shares. I'm just jealous. They've risen. I didn't buy any of these either. By 1.32%. This is very bad. Or very good if you've got them.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, that's a story.
It is, yeah. It's. I mean, I suppose. It's. I think the one thing that we've learned from like, as you say, like the Monarch thing, for example, when airlines have become insolvent, and actually there does seem to be a lot of support that's made available to by other airlines to try and get people like re-employed pretty quickly. as you say, because there are cabin crew shortages, there are pilot shortages.
Yeah.
I suppose you worry as to whether the market is then suddenly flooded with people, and it's bad news for new people who are training and things. I don't know,
sure.
but it's never good news when an airline goes down, is it really?
Yeah, I was just looking at some of the stats on the on the line on the website that I use here to find a few details out, and it's just come up here that 25 of the Airbus A320s have been transferred over to EasyJet.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
And there's a mixture really that Lufthansa have purchased some, Austrian Airlines have purchased some, and also Eurowings have also purchased some of those aircraft. So
very good. Go. Very good indeed.
Yeah. So moving on to the next story, and this one is on the NBA.com. Bit of a picture story, this one, if Matt can bring it on the screen.
Is this like a NBA? Isn't that basketball?
It does sound like basketball.
Yeah, it does. Anyway, yeah.
This is a good picture for this one. But anyway, the headline is: Airline says that bird is likely cause of damage to Oklahoma City Thunder charter plane. This story came on early this week in the news, and Delta Airlines says a charter flight carrying the Oklahoma City Thunder from Minneapolis to Chicago apparently encountered a bird strike early on Saturday when it was landing, causing damage that prompted some players to post photos on social media showing the caved-in nose cone of the plane.
My goodness me! Now I've just put that picture up. If you are watching on YouTube, this is. That's
not a starling.
No, I don't think that's a starling.
Or a sparrow.
No, that's quite serious damage there. I think that's. I don't know. Did he run into a building? I mean, I don't. That's really.
So they posted these pictures on Twitter, as Matt's shown on the screen. And Delta Airlines spokeswoman Elizabeth Wolfe said maintenance was evaluating the situation, and that the damage was likely damage caused by a bird. She said the Boeing 757-200 landed safely without incident at Chicago's Midway International Airport. A spokesperson for the team told the Oklahoma newspaper that all of its players and staff and coaches were safe. The Thunder team lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves 119-116 on Friday night. Well,
who
would
really
have thought that
you would ever be reading out a sports bulletin?
It's the first time this will ever happen, I can tell you now.
I'm amazed. Wow.
But
you heard it here first, ladies.
I know.
Basketball at that. Wow.
Given the choice between football or basketball, I'd watch basketball. Anyway, back to story. It's safe to say though that is quite a well damaged nose cone.
It is, yes.
And you've got to bear in mind that behind that nose cone there is a radar that obviously is used by the aircraft for various functions, which most people know. So, but it's obviously this has happened quite a lot. There's been quite a few. For those of you who do watch or look at the brilliant website, the Aviation Herald, there's quite a few instances with bird strikes on there with similar kind of pictures and outcomes.
Indeed.
So it's not the first time this has happened. So moving on to the next story, and this one's for you, Matt, and this is especially a kind of
in
just
honor
for
of Nev,
in honor of Nev not being here with us tonight.
So this is on the Air Transport World website, so there's atwonline.com, and the headline is British Airways cabin crew settle dispute. This is great news, I suppose, for all BA passengers, I think, and crew. One of the longest running industrial disputes in the UK aviation history has been resolved after British Airways cabin crew voted to accept a pay increase. The dispute, which began in December 2016 and led to more than 80 days of strikes of steadily increasing length, involved mixed fleet staff who worked on both short and long haul services from London Heathrow Airport. Mixed fleet staff makes up around 15% of BA's cabin crew. At the outset of the industrial action, BA said mixed fleet staff typically earned £21,000 to £27,000 sterling. That's $27,800 to $35,700 annually. Unite trade union disputed this, saying salaries were as low as $12,000 plus £3 an hour flying pay, taking the total to around about £16,000. While the pay demands are largely resolved by mid-2017, the union members refused to return to work because of what they described as sanctions by BA against strikers, including removal of staff travel benefits. Unite said on the 31st of October that members had overwhelmingly voted to accept a pay deal that would give them salary increases of £1,404 to £2,908 in sterling by March 2018. The deal also saw travel concessions and entitlements to fully participate in the airline's 2017 bonus scheme returned to cabin crew who took industrial action. A great deal of credit should go to Unite members for their shop stewards in British Airways mixed fleet for their determination and solidarity in securing this settlement. Unite General Secretary Len McCluskey said the British Airways. I'm really doing a very bad job today, aren't I? I'm so sorry. British Airways, which maintained that services were largely unaffected during the strike, and the carrier had bought in wet leased aircraft from other airlines to plug holes in schedules. They said that they were very pleased that the dispute has finally been resolved. I bet they are. Yeah, so it's good news, I suppose, really.
It is good news, yeah. We don't like disputes with airlines, especially when they're our own flag carrier, British Airways.
That is true, yes.
Yes. Have you had any good flights of BA? Have you flown BA before, Howard?
Yeah, I always liked to fly BA when I was working abroad, because when you get on the plane to go home, it's like you're not there, but you know what I mean. It's you're back home in the UK as soon as you go on board.
Actually, I had a chat with Eoin, because I was asking, because he's flown out to New York with Aer Lingus, and he said exactly the same thing for him as an Irishman. It was exactly the same. It's like when you get on the aeroplane in Newark and you're coming back to, in his case, Dublin. He said you get on Aer Lingus and you do literally feel like you've already stepped into the Republic of Ireland, in his case, and it's nice to think that BA has that same sort of feel, I suppose, because it is such an easily identifiable uniform, isn't it? I mean, you can spot British Airways cabin crew a mile off, can't you? And it's just.
So you don't think, Howard, that BA have lost their touch then? Because we have covered stories in the last few months that they've kind of cut back.
That's an interesting question, because their current sort of changes in marketing, if you like, seem to be focused on withdrawing benefits from high fare paying passengers. You pay for Marks and Spencer sandwiches, that kind of stuff, which all makes sense if you are an LCC full stop. But their heritage, their brand, their profile is more than that. So I'm sure they know what they're doing, but in some ways it does seem quite confusing as a consumer that you've got, yes, BA, everyone knows what it stands for, and yet the experience you're getting is being, to some degree, deliberately downgraded.
Yeah, this is true.
Well, Nev, our resident other host of the show, Howard, he is BA through and through. Nev, yeah, he everything BA.
Yes, if you cut him, he bleeds red, white, and blue, doesn't he?
I love them too. I think it's a case of, where will they end up? I mean, it's certainly that as a group, the IAG group is getting it right. They've gone through some difficult times, when they took on Iberia and so on. But as an enterprise, as an organisation, they seem to be doing very well indeed. So let's assume they know more about it than we do.
Well, yes, let's indeed hope.
Always say.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we like to think.
So moving on then to our penultimate story then on this segment for this week, and this one is on the TorontoSun.com.
Oh, that's one for me, isn't it?
And Howard,
Yeah, this is an old chestnut in a way. This is the how to get an upgrade. It's urban myth time, and everyone knows someone who just stood there and suddenly was in first class. What the newspaper's saying is, in fact, it doesn't work like that. That airlines, quite logically, when they've got a need to upgrade because they've got too many people in economy and they haven't filled the business or first class seats, they look at who's on their list, and those who've got the most frequent flyer points or loyalty cards or whatever it happens to be, they get upgraded first. However, the newspaper, in its own article, had already found somebody who confounds that view, a man called George Hobbiker, who in the interview said that even how you dress and act can give you the edge. And he quotes an experience. He said that British Airways, United do upgrade people, going down a list. But his experience is that when he was wearing a nice suit and tie, and all the other passengers were, quote, looking like Richard Simmons, close quote, he got upgraded. Now, I didn't know who Richard Simmons was, and in my exhaustive preparation for this show, which I won't be repeating, I won't be invited on again, so it doesn't matter.
It's about the same level of prep I do, I dare say, anyway.
So I Googled Richard Simmons, and I'm going to tell your audience now not to do that.
Okay.
Which means, of course, they will.
Right, okay.
And I'm not going to accept any liability if that happens next.
Okay. Right, we'll wait for the chat room to light up with terrifying stories any moment then. But
well, just a photo of Richard Simmons will probably explain a lot.
Right, I don't know if I dare do that. I'm not going to do that.
Do you remember Richard Simmons?
No, I don't.
He was kind of in the kind of 80s kind of thing. He was like a fitness instructor.
Oh,
he had massive curly hair.
Oh, okay,
like really big curly hair.
I'm reaching for the word zany.
Right, okay.
I don't really know what it means. But I assume you guys are heavily insured for libel.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Up to about 10 million, we're all right.
But he was one of these. He was one of these incredibly enthusiastic.
Right. Is he a bit like Mr. Motivator?
Yeah.
Like
yes,
TVA?
yes, that comes through. That comes through in the photos. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Right.
Anyway, I mean, I must say, actually, going back slightly to this story, I hate to be boring and all that, but they were. I know quite often it's like this whole. I kind of agree with what Howard's saying here. It does seem to be very much an urban myth, because certainly my experience of trying to get an upgrade, because you've got this bidding system now, haven't you?
Yeah, a lot of airlines do. Yeah.
You know, it's
yes.
you can sort of bid to have upgrades and stuff, and so and a lot of people do that, and it does mean you can get a bargain like upgrade, but you know they don't really give these things away anymore, not like they used to, do they?
But I do think it helps if you do look smart. I've always maintained that.
They're not going to put someone who's in sort of scummy jeans and t-shirt in first class, are they? I mean, it brings back that. Do you remember
Does that mean I can't wear the hat?
No, no. Oh, my God, he took his hat off. Whoa, everyone. My goodness. But it's just what was the name of that thing that they did based out of Stansted Airport, and you've got David Walliams who was playing the first class air steward thing. Anyway, it's got visions of that, you know. It's like, can't have someone from Essex in there, for example, and things that, you know, you've got to be from the home counties at least, otherwise you don't get to go in first class. But
exactly.
Yes. Okay.
So we are going to move on to the last story in the segment for this week, and this one is it's a top 10. Because we do like a top 10 on the show.
Do we? Right.
And this one is on the telegraph.co.uk website. And the headline on this is, and which airline was just voted the best in the world for the 5th year running?
No, you've got to do it like Clarkson. It's got to be in the world. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to run down the top 10. Matt's going to play the music, and I think what we'll do is I'll start with 10, and me and Howard can share it between us.
Okay. I'll do the usual then, shall I? So.
Yeah.
So we are at top of the chart. It is number 10, Carlos.
So at number 10, it is Japan Airlines.
Right, okay. Howard, number 9 for you, please.
I haven't got the list.
Oh no! Oh no!
I only got my own stuff.
Oh no! Okay, well, I'll do this bit then.
Yeah. Okay. So number 9, it is.
Number 9 is Cathay Pacific.
It's a new climber at number 8.
Number 8 is Korean Air.
Staying still, number 7.
Number 7 is All Nippon Airways.
All Nippon Airways. That's very appropriate for this time of year when it is a bit nippy outside. For number 6.
Number 6, it's very posh. It's Etihad Airways.
Very nice, very nice. It's middle for diddle. It's number 5.
Number 5, it's the airline I'm flying with next Thursday. It's Virgin Atlantic.
Get you! And I would much rather be flying with number 4.
Number 4 is Virgin Australia.
Yeah. Good day, mate. Not half. Number 3.
Number 3, it's Singapore Airlines.
Okay, it's a new entry at number 2.
Number 2, this is going to please Steve and Grant McCarran. It's Qantas.
And top of the chart, it is number 1.
And at number 1 on the air rating or airlineratings.com website, it is Air New Zealand.
Oh, Air New Zealand. No, I like that. Actually, I'm surprised not to see a Malaysian Airways in there, actually, because I had a very good experience with them.
A lot of people say Malaysian are really good, actually. But
indeed.
That's quite shocking, though. Air New Zealand and Qantas in the top 5 there, look.
Yeah.
That's good. Mind you, at least Virgin are there at number 5. That's good.
That's true. Yeah.
At least I know I'm flying with a good airline.
Okay, right. Okay. So what are we doing next then, Carlos?
Well, anyway,
I haven't read the show notes, obviously.
Just quickly on that story, airlineratings.com use 13 criteria to create their rankings.
Okay. In other words, they make it up.
No, they examine the safety record of the carrier.
Okay.
The airlines must have a 7-star safety rating, as well as taking into account innovations in passenger comfort, passenger reviews, fleet age, and environmental credentials.
Very good, very good.
So obviously they look at all the different aspects of the flights, economy seating and premium and stuff, and the business class and all the bits and pieces that go together to make the airline. So there we go. So it's good.
There we are. Very good.
I think Nev's probably not going to listen anymore because BA weren't in there.
No, they're not even in the list at all. Full stop. There we go.
So that is where we bring the commercial news segment to a close. So coming up now on the show, then we have got the segment that Nev always produces for us each week, the passenger experience segment. And I'm not quite sure what it's about this week because I didn't get any emails from Nev.
No, you did. No, and yes, I've forgotten the guy's name. I put it together and I forgot the guy's name. So this will be a lovely surprise for all of us then. Honestly, we do rehearse this, honestly, I promise.
So sit back, relax, and here is Nev's passenger experience segment for this week.
Hello, it's Nev here again with another passenger experience segment. Well, today I'm in Joe's Kitchen, which is a nice restaurant in Bermondsey, southeast London, and I'm speaking with Mike Jones of Film and Video Umbrella. It's a regular haunt for Mike and I, and we often have many hours of technical discussions there. Mike is Technical Director of FVU, and his organisation commissions, curates, produces and presents artists' moving image works that are staged in collaboration with galleries and other cultural partners across the UK. We spoke about the flying that Mike does for leisure, and I began by asking him about his experiences on his last flight.
Nev, you're going to like this one because this is a Ryanair story. This was a bit of leisure flying, going on holiday with my family, so that's four adults, London Stansted to Naples, going on holiday in Italy. And beginning of the experience probably was maybe like 2 weeks before the actual flight, and perhaps was a little bit of an indication of what might have been to come with Ryanair, because a flight that we'd booked onto for, I'm recalling now, I think maybe like a 9:35 flight, got an email saying that flight didn't exist anymore, and you were then rebooked onto a 6:15, I think, which was a little bit of an eye-opener. So having got to Stansted for the now revised earlier flight, and you get yourself there nice and early on time, and of course lots of talk about the amount of extra queuing going on. This was maybe a couple of months back, so there's a lot of stories about even more extra time needed at the airports, so we allowing ourselves even more extra time. You then get there and then find that actually nothing is going to happen until 6:15. You can't actually even work out where to go and do your automated bag drop-off check-in type procedure, so you're all just standing around. You might as well have stayed in bed for an extra hour, but of course you wouldn't want to do that because you're going to be risking too much. So the beginning of it wasn't so great in that respect. All right, once we got going into the usual security and so on at Stansted, all actually pretty straightforward and fairly efficient. I always think the great shame about Stansted Airport is that I recall when it was originally designed and built, and is it Norman Foster, I think, as the designer of the airport? And I think the original idea was, and the concept, if you like, was that you could stand on one side of the airport, you could see all the way through it out to the air side of the airport. There was this idea of this extremely fluid travel experience where you were going through one side of the building, you could clearly see where you were going and that you're heading out to airside and your flight and your escape into the skies. And now there's a kind of shanty town of temporary walls and structures built inside the whole building, obviously by necessity in terms of security and I guess all the additional capacity which they hadn't quite anticipated when it was originally built. So it's a bit of a shame really that the building itself is just kind of like a lot of places. Seems to be a whole series of temporary structures all built inside the building, then a kind of curious series of a bit of a rat's maze of endless corridors and turns left and right. And of course Ryanair, not much of a turning left experience going on there, pretty much the standard stuff. Haven't been on that airline so many times, but what I was struck by having gone onto the plane eventually was I presume they must have worked out that by taking out, or rather putting in, a couple of extra rows, they can make a little bit more money, but it certainly doesn't help with the leg room, and it's a rather claustrophobic experience.
And what about Naples itself? What about the airport, and what was that like checking in and coming back?
Well, it's quite a small airport, which is quite nice. And everything starts off well, although again I'd read a little bit online, people were giving some warnings about how things were not necessarily particularly efficient in terms of the check-in procedures and security and so on, and expect queuing and all that kind of thing. So again, get along there nicely, nice and early. It all seemed to go pretty smoothly to start off with. I didn't really know what all the fuss was about. Didn't think very much of that. But then what became apparent was when you actually get closer to the getting on the planes part of it, it's a bit like going down a funnel. So the amount of space that's allowed for passengers as you reach each of the gates is really quite tight. And also pretty confusing. So several of the gates are all really, really close to each other. So you get a backlog of queuing, and you can't tell which queue you're in. And this actually causes, it's actually quite stressful, because you genuinely think, am I actually queuing up in the right place? I can't see where I'm supposed to be going. And in fact, what was going on was there was a Ryanair, there was a couple of EasyJet to Bristol, which I was quite surprised to see. Several kind of budget carrier flights, all leaving allegedly at rather similar times, and everyone's been called to the gates at the same time. You can't tell which queue you're supposed to be in. So that, combined with what now seems to be a fairly standard thing of yes, you can take on carry-on luggage, but they've only got a certain amount of space for it. So a whole load of people are then being asked to put their carry-on luggage to one side because it's got to go in the hold anyway, which I guess gets you a bit of freehold luggage if you wanted to play that game. But it seemed to also contribute to the overall delay that was going on. So this combination of this kind of funnel of queuing, confusion, doubt about which way you should be, and having to sort of actually, in a way, at the end, get your elbows out a little bit to try and find yourself into the right place. It wasn't a great experience in that regard. It also seemed to me that the scheduled departure time is really sort of just for guidance only. So I think the idea that you might even be just about sitting on the plane by the scheduled departure time seemed to be just about the standard that seemed to be aimed at. And no one seemed to be that bothered by that. There seemed to be a general sort of shrug of shoulders and kind of relief that you got on the plane in the first place. Flying itself, flight time and everything like that, couldn't fault that really. All seemed pretty good. But the experience leading up to it, not a great one. And particularly when you've come off the end of, as I say, in this case, it was for leisure, it was a holiday. You're feeling fairly relaxed and happy about having spent some time in Italy and enjoying the food and the scenery and the sunshine. And it's not the best ending to your holiday and your way back into the UK.
You can see why, though, that is a popular service that Ryanair offer, because, you've got 4 people going with you, I guess, in your case, taking the whole family. Trying to do that on British Airways from Gatwick or something, that's a different order of magnitude in terms of cost, isn't it?
Well, that's quite right, and in a way that's what determined the choice to go with Ryanair. In fact, there didn't seem to be that much choice about airlines that you could go on to Naples. We did actually look at a couple of other nearby airports to where we were going, but that wasn't an option either. So, if you're if you're dipping in your own pocket and, 4 adults travelling together, yes, absolutely right. You've got to make those sorts of choices. And I guess at the end of the day, you probably say, okay, well, I have to put up with this in order to get to that, So, but having said that, some of the things that were happening, certainly at the Naples airport end of things, I thought could have been quite easily solved. Just a bit better communication, a little bit more clearer signage, and perhaps slightly more staggered times for departure. All of that could have solved that problem, whereas what you'd actually got was a lot of people really not knowing what was going on, being pretty confused, getting quite stressed out, and that's not good, because then people start actually having a bit of a go at each other, which is not necessary at all, but you can see how that sort of thing can happen. The usual thing, limited number of staff to be found, but it seemed to be the normal there, and I think it's a bit unfortunate, really, and it seemed to be something you could quite easily solve.
Very interesting, Mike. Great to speak to you about it. Thanks ever so much indeed.
Thanks very much, Nev.
Thank you, Nev, for that. As always, fantastic to hear from you, and obviously your guest for that segment. So,
yeah, absolutely. And of course, Ryanair. It's quite often a
hot topic.
It is very much a hot topic, isn't it? About airlines and things. It's. I know I keep saying this, but they are just the buses of the skies, aren't they? You do get what you pay for, and when you think me and Owen went to Toulouse, and we went to Toulouse and back for basically a tenner each way, really, we should have been grateful we had seats. And weren't...
You didn't stand it?
No, we didn't stand
it. Okay, but they weren't wing seats?
No, they weren't wing seats,
okay.
No, indeed. But I don't know. I mean, as I say, Howard, you were saying that you've been lucky enough that you haven't had much Ryanair experience.
No, it's just how it works out, isn't it, really? EasyJet. I was reading something in the paper this week about a guy who I think was going from Edinburgh to London, maybe Manchester, and it was cheaper to fly to Berlin and Warsaw and then London than go on the train.
Yeah.
And that story in different forms has been around before.
It has. I remember a local story. Actually, there was a girl here in the UK that wanted to do to go to a meetup, and it was the same thing. It was actually cheaper to go. I think the meetup was in Scotland or something silly, and she was down in Southampton, and it was cheaper to fly to Berlin and then go to Scotland or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just than to actually go, direct on the train, which is just ridiculous. I mean, it's just crazy, isn't it? Anyway, yes.
So we have got, for coming up next, we've got a short video that Owen sent in to us, which is great. It's because Owen is he's in the US at the moment.
He's in the US at the moment.
He's going to be meeting up with Matt
absolutely.
in a few days' time. But Owen sent us in a video, so we're going to play Owen's video, and then straight after that, we're going to play an awesome little segment that has been sent in to us from Micah.
Yes. While we're playing these next two pieces, by the way, guys, do please get your questions into the chat room for
get
Howard.
Your questions ready for Howard.
A chat with Howard very shortly. So if you've got any questions you want answering about the great videos that he's made, obviously now is your chance to ask the main man directly. So get them into the chat room, and we'll be doing all that after this.
Hey guys, it's Owen here. I'm in the 51st and Green. It's the fantastic new lounge in Dublin Airport. That's not new, it's probably about 2 years old at this stage, but this is the lounge that you get to go to if you are heading to the States. The interesting thing about this lounge is that it's actually, legally in the United States, and I'm seated here right in Dublin Airport, and I'm sitting here right at the threshold of the runway 1028. You can see some traffic landing behind me just there, and absolutely fantastic lounge. I'm on my way to New York. I flew from Heathrow this morning, from Heathrow to Dublin VA, and then I will be going on to Newark today with Aer Lingus. So just spending the time here in Dublin to get all of the immigration and border control and customs done. So just a little quick update as to what I'm doing and what this place is like. Absolutely fantastic lounge and great for the av geeks as well. You're right in the heart of the action, right up beside the ramp, up beside all of the aircraft out here. Really, really, really great lounge. So I'll probably talk to you more when I get into New York, but from me for the moment, bye.
See, now the thing that's fascinating about that is the fact that for some reason, when you're in Dublin, you can actually do all your immigration for the US there. Yeah. So you can do it in Dublin. So when you've arrived at the other end, that's it. You can walk straight out. And now I didn't know that there were sort of extensions of border controls, if you like for the States, for example.
Yeah.
In Dublin, this is brand new and shiny information to me. I didn't know that was a thing.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it? It's good.
Is there any other places that that people can do that? I mean,
I don't know actually.
Yeah, I've not heard of that before.
Perhaps Howard knows.
Yeah. It saves you 2 hours when you get to the States by checking in Dublin. And there was a piece in the paper last week, I can't remember which regional airport it is, might be Southend or something or other, which has got now a new route to Dublin. And the marketing pitch is that you go from there to New York and you're checked in Dublin as your guy was there. And you're technically stateside before you leave.
This is the thing. So he was basically sitting in that departure lounge in Dublin Airport, and he was basically stateside. You know, so from that point onwards, he's treated as a sort of he's already arrived, if you like, at the other end. I mean,
it's another version of being in transit, isn't it? You know, you go into Hong Kong and you're going on to Australia or something like that, and you're in Hong Kong, but actually you're not. You're in some kind of limbo.
In fact, actually, Liz in the chat room here is saying that that's the same thing in Toronto and most large airports in Canada. She's saying we have US Customs and Border Control here, and we clear them before we fly to the US. Saves a lot of time at the other end, which is just And Graham Haley is saying Shannon in Ireland, I believe, Matt, there is a BA A319 from London City, and you do immigration while it refuels, which it's just fascinating. I genuinely had no idea that was a thing. Interestingly enough, by the way, also, please, that was a classic example of how easy it is to send us your video feedback.
Very easy.
That was recorded on an iPhone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all right. Don't be horrible. It was recorded on an iPhone, and he literally just did it using the microphone in the phone, and he just sent it straight to me. So, look, guys, you've got no excuse to send your feedback to us. It really is that easy. You just grab your phone. You can do it all with that nowadays. So, everybody else, get to it. Do it now. Do it now.
So we've got one last little segment to play then before we have our chat with Howard. And this one, it was sent in by someone everyone in the aviation podcast community will know. It's the voice. It's the voice of storytelling, really.
Well, it is. Yes, and, absolutely. So get comfortable, everyone.
Get comfortable. Put your slippers on. Get your glass of hot cocoa ready.
Yes,
because we have got a lovely little segment here, which has been sent in by the awesome Micah.
Happy birthday, Nev. In 3, 2, 1. He's a problem solver. Got an analog audio glitch? He can fix it. Digital overtones haunting your production? He's the spook chaser. Computer acting up? He's the uncle virus to everyone else's antivirus. Digital artifacts coming from nowhere on your video screen? He removes them. Need your Ron Jeremy collection transferred from Betamax to Blu-ray? He's your man. Yes, Neville Bounds, the devil of a genius, and not just with technology, what we call NevTech. It seems Neville can solve any problem. Need to coordinate an international meetup of a bunch of aviation fiends on any continent? Neville Bounds is your man. I've seen him do it on 2 different continents. In fact, that's how we met. Okay, before I go on, let me tell you a secret. I love to travel. Okay, so you're saying that's no secret. I know you love to travel. Why wouldn't you? Well, that's not the secret, although it's part of it. The secret? Well, I don't think I'm a good traveler. Not eastbound anyway, over long distances. I just don't handle jet lag well. And as shall we say mature, it hasn't gotten better. Neville knows how to handle jet lag. I mean, he's brilliant, but I told you that already. I learned about Nev's brilliance way before we met. We got to know one another 6 or more months before we met in person, through the Airline Pilot Guy podcast, a place from where I've been fortunate enough to make many friends. I think Nev and I first really got to know one another when we sat in together on an APG After Dark show one night on Google Hangouts. I think it was at APG After Dark when, together with Carlos, we had the opportunity to play with Mila in her pajamas. Talk about a bonding experience. Oh, and to be clear, Mila was wearing her pajamas, not us. To further clarify, let me explain that our magical Mila, being the classy girl she is, was in lovely flannel pajamas, perfectly ladylike and delightful as always. The play was just our usual wordplay. I don't want to give that poor sweet girl an undeserved reputation, and frankly, I have no idea why she would choose to hang out with we ruffians anyway. But that was the beginning. After that, Nev and I communicated via email, talked on Skype, and just got to know one another. I learned of his audio genius, that he's a soul man in a techno world, a man whose gleaming digital essence is filled with a big analog heart. Neville Bounds is a first-class guy in every sense, not just when flying BA. As I mentioned before, Nev helped to organize much of the Farnborough 2016 meetup. That included transportation, too. Among many other things, he arranged to pick me and Brian up at Heathrow and take us to the Holiday Inn Farnborough. That was the first time he and I really met. I can't imagine what he thought of me when we first met in person. He probably said to himself, "What have I gotten myself into?" Well, let me explain why. I flew across the pond on United on a typical July afternoon. Here in the Northeast USA, summer afternoons mean convective weather, and convective weather almost always means an ATC ground stop. My connection was through Newark, and you can almost always count on a ground hold there on summer afternoons. My flight out of Portland was at 1800, and I planned to be at the Portland Jetport by 1500. Then the conflicting messages from United started arriving. My flight was delayed, my flight was changed, my flight was canceled, I was connecting through Dulles. The messages kept coming in, one after the other, and kept changing. I couldn't get a straight answer. No one could. Brian tried at the LAX United Club. Cranky concierge couldn't find out anything. And the United phone support? Well, no surprise there. At the airport, there was a long line at the check-in counter. All flights were canceled. I was queued up in front of a brand-new check-in agent who just didn't know what to do. I heard her dealing with the people in front of me and knew she was giving them wrong information. But I also knew enough not to say anything. When it was my turn, I told her how sorry I felt for her. Disappointing so many people, she must feel awful. That's when I gave her a box of chocolates and told her I hoped these would let her know that I appreciated her hard work. She smiled and thanked me, then looked over my records and told me there was nothing she could do. Again, I knew she was wrong, but this time I spoke up, as I knew there were other options. You see, at this point, I saw that one flight to EWR had been cleared and was scheduled to leave in 20 minutes. When she said she couldn't get me on it, I said I understood, but wondered if there was anyone else who might have more authority. She told me her boss was at lunch, but as she spoke those words, her boss came through the door behind the counter. There was still a long line behind me, and when the boss asked what was going on, I pulled out another box of chocolates. I told her, since she was just getting back from lunch, that she must need dessert. Plus, based on the line behind me, it seemed she might have a long afternoon ahead of her. She gave me a big smile and looked at my records on screen. "Yes, your flight is canceled," she said. "But the earlier plane that was delayed will now arrive at the same time as your scheduled flight. Let's get you on it." Although my problem was solved, I have to say I was frazzled. My new flight, originally scheduled to depart at 13:30, didn't end up leaving until around 19:30, an hour and a half later than my original flight. That meant connections became tight with the terminal changes at EWR, but they were still possible. Needless to say, I made the tight connection. So did my bag, for that matter. Thank you, United. Now, on the 767 to LHR, I did get moved around a bit by a flight attendant. I was in Economy Plus, and chocolates given to a flight attendant can really work magic. She brought me champagne and moved me to a row by myself. But even with that luxury, I couldn't sleep. I may have closed my eyes for 20 minutes and arrived at LHR at 10 a.m., but my body clock was at 0500. I was exhausted. Between the earlier stress of almost missing the flight, the close connection and my jog to change terminals at EWR, not sleeping, having been awake all night, I was just feeling a bit lost migrating towards the immigration lines and the massiveness of T2. Let's face it, at this point I was beyond frazzled. I was fried. Adding to my confused state, all of a sudden, coming from somewhere behind me, I heard my name being shouted. At this point I figured I was hallucinating, and that was before the crazy side of my mind kicked in. What have I done? Have I been caught? I mean, I know that the paranoids have been after me for a long time, but have they finally found me? Do I need a new tinfoil hat? I told you, I was fried. It turned out that Fred Sampson had landed just behind me on his flight from SFO. I mean, I'd heard that one never knows where you might run into Fred, but this was just amazing. I was overwhelmed, and still just fried. Fred and I passed through immigration together. He took off to get his rental car, and I sat down to gather myself and figure out where I was going to meet Nev. Now I swear that among his other many talents, Neville Bounds is a mind reader. The moment I took out my phone, it rang. It was Nev calling to give me easy directions to find him. I walked out and met Neville Bounds for the very first time in real life. He was the first of what I call my new old friends. If you've experienced it, you know exactly what I mean. When Nev and I met, it felt like we'd known each other for many years. Nev could see I was fried. My guess is it came from his previous employment in hospital. Although not directly working with patients, he sure demonstrated patience with me. He walked me over to a cafe and fed me some coffee as we sat and talked while we waited for Brian's flight to arrive. For me, time passed quickly. I hope it did for Nev, too. The 2-hour wait seemed like only 20 minutes. And during those 2 hours, Nev used his seemingly magic ability to fix almost any problem and managed to calm me down as my fried, jet-lagged brain seemed to settle into place. We met up with Brian and headed out to the parking garage where Nev's marvelous yellow Ford Banana awaited us. I tried to get into the back seat as I thought I would fall asleep, but Brian claimed it first. This gave me my first experience being a passenger in the front left seat of a vehicle as Nev drove us the 30 miles to Farnborough. Good thing Nev managed to calm me down during the previous 2 hours. If he hadn't, my fingernail marks might still be in the dashboard. Bear in mind, Nev's a great driver. I just never been a passenger in the front seat of an automobile in the UK. To me, everything was flowing in the wrong direction. We arrived at the hotel, and Brian and I checked in. Nev said he would wait in the bar until it was time for us to go to dinner, and Brian chose to head right over to the air show and do some advance work. Although I knew it wasn't recommended, I decided to take a nap. I got to my room, unpacked a bit, took a shower, and climbed into bed. About 3 hours later, I woke up in a strange panic. Jet lag can do that to you, I've been told. I had no idea what time it was. I didn't even know where I was, for that matter. It took me a minute to get things straight in my mind, but eventually I figured it out. I got up, took another shower, and even though it was early, headed down to the bar to meet Nev. I've got to say, I was never so happy to see a familiar face. I told Nev about my strange experience of waking up in a confused daze, and he told me he had a great afternoon. He had worked on some projects, and managed to squeeze in a walk down to a local pub and meet Stuart Aslett for a pint. As usual, Nev used his great problem-solving skills and once again calmed me down and got me off to a great start of what turned out to be one of the best experiences in my life. It may have been only 5 days, but I made some lifetime friends, and Nev was a first. So happy birthday, Neville Bounds. Thanks for the magic of Farnborough, for the magic of Pittsburgh too, for that matter. Thanks for being more than an industry colleague. Thanks for being my friend. Thanks for being a part of Plain Talking UK and helping to shape what was always a great podcast into something even better. Now, before I close this out, I need to point out one more thing. I hope you noticed that I didn't say that Nev was the best part of the PTUK podcast. I mean, he comes close, but PTUK is a group effort with Matt and Carlos making magic and Nev adding to it. But the best part of PTUK is none of those guys. The best part of PTUK is Gemma, when she becomes an inadvertent part of the show. And it turns out it's Gemma's birthday too. So happy birthday, Gemma. You must be thrilled to finally be old enough to have your first legal cocktail. Carlos, get that girl a nice bottle of wine. All the best to you. For Plain Talking UK, here in Portland, Maine in the USA, this is your main man, Micah.
Find this and other great shows at the Aviation Media Network.
thevoicesinyourhead.com.
The Plain Talking UK podcast is a voluntary project that aims to keep you informed with the latest aviation-related stories from newswires across the globe.
Producing our content does cost money though. If you enjoy our show, why not help us keep on the air by making a donation towards the server and website hosting fees through PayPal. Any contributions would be greatly appreciated.
Are you an Amazon user? If so, why not do your shopping through the link on our website? There's no cost to yourself and Amazon pay us a small referral fee on qualifying purchases.
To find out more about the show and to meet the team, take yourself to our website www.plaintalkinguk.com,
or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/plaintalkinguk, on Twitter via @plaintalkinguk, or get in touch via email on podcast@plaintalkinguk.com. Thanks for listening.
Flybe 5823, Trent Dane for 23R Manchester, Wizz Air 6X, climb flight level 210, direct to Bretlands Park. United 123, maintain 280 knots.
London 2DME, turn right onto Bravo, link, 21 join Alpha, hold at Mora, Speedbird 472, LOC/DME, approach runway 27 left, follow the green stand 544.
That's enough air traffic control for today, Nat. Bedtime.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to fly a commercial passenger jet? Looked up at the sky and thought, I wish that was me? Well, now anyone has the chance to have a go at flying in a real aircraft simulator. NP Simulations and Flight Experience London, the only official Boeing licensed product of its kind in the UK, offer you the chance to fly anywhere in the world in their fixed-base Boeing 737-800 flight simulator. And that's not all. Ground School London offers many different courses for the up-and-coming pilot looking for a start in aviation. With prices starting at just £109, the sky's the limit. So for the ultimate flight simulator experience, or engaging preparatory courses, including those for schools and colleges, check out the websites at www.london.flightexperience.co.uk and www.groundsschoollondon.com, or call on 020 300 40 616. NP Simulations. Fly your dreams.
It's always nice to hear from Micah.
It is,
isn't it?
The legend it is, yes. Uncle Micah.
Uncle Micah, yeah. Uncle Micah. Well done. Thanks for that, Micah.
Yeah,
very, very kind of you.
And I'm sure Nev will hear it when he catches up.
He will.
He will be marking my performance today, obviously, for technical prowess, etc. Because that's what he does. Yeah. Okay. Right. Great news, ladies and gentlemen. Howard has been very patient. Bless him.
He has been very patient.
And it is time to have a nice chat about him. So. Basically, Howard, so it's a rather fascinating range of sort of DVDs and things. But I mean, how did it all start? What was the
catalyst?
The catalyst, the passion, if you like. I mean, is it just a keen love of aviation and that? I mean, how did it happen?
Well, my love of aviation started when my next door neighbours took me to London Airport. It wasn't called Heathrow then, in 1960. So we're talking Viscounts and Constellations and that kind of thing. So I was sort of hooked from there. As far as videoing goes, well, for a start, my wife will tell you that I'm absolutely hopeless at taking still photographs. Just no point. She's very good. She's got an excellent camera and she's very good at that. But I went to a wedding. And someone said, "Oh, so this guy was supposed to do a film at the wedding. He's not turned up. Here's a camera. Can you have a go?" And I think there's a kind of instinctive thing, if you do it reasonably well, where you're not just using the camera as a pair of eyes. You're filming to produce something that people will look at, rather than just a record of what you're seeing. If that makes any sense.
It does.
It probably doesn't, but anyway. So I kind of got that from the off, and we went to Paraguay, and I filmed, just because they were there, some wood-burning steam engines. And I was in a transport bookshop somewhere, and there was a book on the counter with a picture of one of these engines. And my wife said to the guy behind the counter, Howard's got video of that, but he's really more interested in filming airliners, because I'd been up to Heathrow with this horrible video camera that sounded like a cement mixer when it changed focus and so on. And he took a video off the shelf and he said, "I'll have that. If yours is as good as that, come back." And I looked at it, and I'd always edited my stuff together.
Yeah.
And I went back and said, "Yeah, I think it is. This is what I've done." And he put me in touch with, in those days, you had to go to a TV studio. And if you wanted a mix between two shots, it was almost like they got a man out with a brown coat on, and he pulled two brass and mahogany levers, and you got a mix. Whereas these days, it's all digital, and you do what you want.
I mean, Neville tells stories of how it was always done magically with, he used to use like reel-to-reel tape machines, sort of editing things and putting them all together like that. I mean, it's really quite frightening in such a short period of time how the technology has changed so massively. I mean, you think, as an example, I mean, this that we're doing the show with right now is basically just a glorified PC. It's got a piece of very sophisticated software on it, and it can turn webcams literally into, stuff that people used to pay hundreds of thousands of pounds for, in a professional studio. It's amazing how things have changed now.
Absolutely. I was spending pretty much what you'd have to pay now for a digital editing system every time I went to a TV studio for the man in the brown coat. And if there was a dropout in the final version, they always said it was on my camera tape. I'm sure it wasn't. But so that's how I got started. And this was just getting on for 25 years ago now. So we're talking early 1990s, when things were getting tight in terms of airport security, but not impossible. You could go to places like Zurich and get airside to film there. And also you could get permission to film in the great spectator terraces of Frankfurt and so on. And filming airside or being airside, doing anything, is one of those jobs where if you haven't got experience, you can't do it. And if you can't do it, you don't get the experience. So you have to kind of break that catch-22. But I was able to do that. And you could still... once you'd got some experience, I did things like talk to Virgin Atlantic about flying on the flight deck of one of their A340s going into Kai Tak. I did a training video for the government flying service out there, which involved flying in a helicopter out to one of the out islands from Hong Kong, and used their base to film airside. And so on. So, and that shot there, that Air India 747, that's filmed airside at Heathrow because I made a video for their visitor centre using my historic material. So we did a mutually scratching each other's backs, and I didn't charge them, they didn't charge me.
Fantastic. So about the DVDs and Howard, you've got some absolutely fantastic footage and some amazing shots of some airliners that are no longer, and airlines as well, that are no longer in service. What does it take to find all these pieces of video? Is it kind of through word of mouth, or do people donate the film footage to you?
Well, on each DVD, in addition to a menu so you can select various elements of the programme, we normally have a trailer, although there isn't one on the TriStar DVD, but we have a section on We Want Your Cinefilm, and there's a little demonstration of what we can do with Cinefilm. We've had some fantastic material that's come from aviation enthusiasts, and that's really the ideal source, because they were interested in the unusual stuff. If you get that, that's brilliant. I do have a daily trawl on eBay, looking for stuff that people have got from house clearances and so on, and occasionally you get lucky. What can I think of? Do you know what a Handley Page HP-81 Hermes is?
No.
It was a very horrible aircraft
right.
that was a nose-wheel version of Hastings, which was an even worse aircraft, and BOAC had to have about 20 of them, and they got rid of them quite quickly. So they're very rare. I got some film that was just holiday film, someone going from Birmingham to Ireland, and they happened to film an Air Safari's Hermes taxiing in and so on, and it's only about a couple of minutes long, but it's just incredibly rare. It's in colour.
In colour? Wow.
Well, all my stuff is in colour. Wow. Apart from, I do have some 1952 material at Heathrow with Lancastrians and Yorks, and a thing called a Languedoc, which was used by Air France. That is in black and white. But generally speaking, it's in colour, and a lot of it is so rare that I have a real problem in doing the covers for the DVDs, because I can't find colour photographs of what's on the programme.
Of course.
So if you look at some of the, you've got a catalogue there, Carlos got a catalogue. Some of the DVD covers are actually a montage of quite small pictures, because they're still shots from the video, because it's the only way
that you can get.
Yeah, I mean, the TriStar one is that they're actually real photographs that somebody did, but quite often on the historic stuff, I have to use that because that's all there is. It's anyway, that's where we.
So,
I don't want to ramble on too much. I mean, you better tell me what you want to.
So, we were talking earlier about, as you sent us some great clips that I want to work our way through, if that's okay with you. One of personal interest, obviously, you were saying how you're gathering these things, and obviously you're buying things on eBay, and people are sending you stuff, and because that means essentially you're doing a lot of things with cinefilm, obviously, because that's where a lot of this historical footage is coming through. So I'm just going to play a little clip that you sent, if I may, about how you go about editing with cinefilm. And guys, if you're listening to the audio version of this show, this is one of those rare occasions where actually it's worth watching or looking us up on YouTube, because these videos are absolutely brilliant. But I'm just going to play you this. This is Howard's basically describing to us how he goes about restoring a clip.
This is really good,
from
guys.
cinefilm. So this is a must watch.
Let's take a look at how I restore a clip originally shot on 8mm cinefilm. It's running too fast, so I've now slowed it down. That's better, but ideally I need to get rid of that camera shake using a special video filter. Here you can see just how effective the anti-shake software is. Getting better, but the picture's too dark, so first I'll lower the midtones and then increase the black levels. I'll also adjust the chroma level slightly and sharpen the image. Now you can see the difference between the original and the upgraded version. Now I need to add sound, and this shot looks to be a good donor. By doing this, I can match the action of the Hawkins & Powers C-97 to that of the US Air Force One. Then I make the video transparent, and here's the finished result.
They see now that is absolutely, to a geek like me, that is absolutely fascinating.
Absolutely amazing work.
And I can't get over that. The thing that blows my mind so much is, as you said, and I suppose this is the advantage of sort of, new digital filters that are available to you, but the way that you don't realise how stable that image, or unstable that image is, if you like, the actual raw footage that you've got to play with. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, just sort of walk us through.
From start to finish, Howard, how long does it take when you get the initial idea? You're going to pick a certain aircraft. I'm going to do a DVD on this aircraft. So from start to finish, when the DVD is released, how sort of time scale?
Well, first of all, you can't necessarily decide I'm going to make a program about this aircraft. Now, I did when I worked with some British Aerospace Film Archive. I made 2 programs on the BAC 111 and one on the BC 10. So we knew, okay, that's what we're doing. But when you're working with vintage cinefilm that's coming from a variety of sources, you can't say, oh, I haven't got that, I'll go and film it. You are totally limited by the amount of material you've got. And it's interesting, if you watch some programs on TV, historical stuff, there was one on about the Queen's wedding the other day. And that was an hour program with adverts, and they actually, I don't think, had more than 6 or 8 minutes of cinefilm in that. They're repeating stuff. I never repeat shots in my programs. I don't tell you what I'm going to do and then do it and then tell you what I just did, which is the way they do it on TV. So you're kind of stuck. And that's one of the reasons that I produce my classic airliner collection DVDs. I've got 2 of those, and I'm working on a 3rd one now. And they are a kind of magazine format where you may just get, like I was saying about the Hermes just now, there's no story there other than an incredibly rare aircraft and an awful airline run by some mad Polish guy who ran several airlines, and it was this real buccaneering era, people want to see that. I have a tremendous problem with Hermes because they have Centaurus engines, and I don't have any Centaurus sound. But I would use a sleeve valve engine like the Hercules to get the closest I can to that. But everything else, if you're seeing a DC-4, it's got DC-4 sound, not DC-6. Because, actually, in all seriousness, I think that if you're working with historic material and you're putting it into a format that is going to survive going forward, then you have a responsibility to get that accurate.
Indeed.
Because in 20 years' time, someone will look at that and they will think that's how it sounded, that's how it looked. And if you've cheated, well, you're actually confusing future historians. It sounds a bit sort of sad, really.
Not at all. No, not at all. But I mean, we often go on about accuracy in stories and things is such a big problem, and it's one of Nev's pets hate. So I'm just going to take a question from the chat room here, actually, on the subject basically of what you were talking about there.
Who's that from?
And this is from Tony S, and he's saying a question for Howard: is there any DVD that you've wanted to produce but have been unable to get decent footage of? Is there's something in your collection that you'd love to have sort of put together?
I would. I mean, if you were really able to wave a magic wand, I would love to be able to go back to the mid-50s to early 60s and have a really good look at British independent airlines. There was so much variety in terms of aircraft, airlines. They were popping up here, going bankrupt the next month, and so on. It was an amazing time, and quite often when you look at film from then, it's the aircraft. Okay, that's what we're interested in, but all the stuff surrounding it, the people, the fact everyone used to dress up. I mean, I have film of a really horrible Invicta DC-4 at Manchester. And I think it must have been a Women's Institute outing going on this thing. And all the ladies are wearing massive hats as they get on this plane that you and I would never travel on. It's trailing smoke and just awful. But people dressed up. It was a different era. And I think that's fascinating too. But to go back to your question, how long does it take? If I'm producing an hour-long program from scratch with cinefilm, all of which is silent, it would take me 2 to 3 months to do that.
My goodness,
but that's not solid work, because I have other things I do as well. But it can involve very long days, and you can work for a couple of hours and to get 20 seconds of material right.
Yes,
because if say you've got a Dakota landing and you want Dakota sound, it's got to. I can reverse the direction of the sound. That's not a problem, but aircraft touchdown at different points on the runway, their relationship to the camera is different, or the sound recording, and as you'll know if you think about it, the sound of an aircraft coming towards you is completely different from the sound of it departing. So when I'm synchronizing film, as we were showing in that clip just now, I'm trying to get the point at which the wing passes the camera in sync, because that will make the sound accurate.
Yeah, and it'll feel like it is actually from the original footage, essentially.
Oh sure, yeah. I mean, I can take stereo digital sound of, say, a C-97 hauling salmon in Alaska in the late 80s, early 90s, and match that to a BOAC Stratocruiser at Heathrow in 1955.
Indeed. Actually, along those lines, Tony was asking again, so out of all the DVDs you've got, is there one out there big seller? What's your big...
I think a big seller.
Obviously the TriStar one is the big seller.
Well, actually...
you and your TriStar.
Sorry, am I missing you, or are you there?
Yeah, hello, sorry.
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, so basically, what's your best-selling DVD?
Apart from
the
TriStar.
Apart from the TriStar.
Well, the TriStar is pretty young. It's doing reasonably well. But the bestseller of all time is probably my London Airport in the 60s and 70s program. And that has just I can't remember now. It's probably 70 minutes, something like that. And like all our DVDs, it's all colour. Is the sort of comic Caravel, Tu-104, Viscount Vanguard era. We've got another one which is London Airport in the 50s and 60s, which, although the 60s are covered in both of them, they all have completely unique material. And that starts slightly earlier with the odd Viking, York, Stratocruisers, Super Constellations, that kind of thing. So that one, and the VC-10 is very popular as well.
We've got a question from Micah, our main man Micah, over at Portland in Maine in the US. He's asking, have you done any work with the Bristol Brabazon?
No. And that's an interesting question, because the footage of the Brabazon is very well known, quite limited, and owned by, in the main, newsreel companies. Now, someone suggested to me recently, a customer, I ought to try getting hold of some Pathé footage. Pathé have got quite a lot of footage on the web. You can watch it for nothing. But to use it commercially, they were going to charge me £700 a minute.
Wow.
To use that.
Goodness me.
I do pay for anyone who's got Cinefilm. I do pay, but I pay at the rate of about £500 an hour for the right to use it. And just on that, can I say, if you have Cinefilm, first of all, don't put those little yellow reels through a projector after 30 or 40 or 50 years, because the film will be tightly wound and brittle, and it could break. Do send it to me. I don't care if I watch lots of stuff that is never usable, as long as it is airliners. And it's amazing what we can do. The film quite often will have a pink or red cast over the whole film, and you'd think, oh, well, that's, we can't use that. But just by sampling the areas that would be white or black or whatever, you can automatically re-register that colour, and that then will change all the other colours back to what it should be.
Goodness me.
So it's amazing what you can do. So please don't throw it away.
No.
And please, if there are aviation enthusiasts out there who filmed 8mm, 16mm, whatever it happens to be, and you want to see that restored with accurate sound, get your name on a DVD, get a free copy, get paid, please get in touch.
Fantastic.
Wow. And on that note of,
yeah, not at all.
On the note of footage there, actually, Richard King has just asked, he said, because you touched on it earlier, but he just said that how do you source the old footage? You know, you said you get some, find some on eBay, but are there any other ways that you manage to find these amazing?
Generally, it's customers or people who become aware of what I do. Who will get on to me. I had someone this week who has got some Super Constellation and DC-6 film, and he sent that to me, and that's very useful. In the same week, I actually bought, I think for about £5 on eBay, a holiday video reel that someone had made, because the still shot in it had a Sabina Convair 440 starting up.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, right, well, if they filmed that, they probably filmed a bit more and a bit after that, and I might get a bit out of it. but you're talking less than a minute by the time you've done that. So we're kind of scratching around. eBay's not really a very good source because the people selling the stuff don't really know what they've got. The real gold mine is when you've got an enthusiast who's got a couple of 100 feet of film and knew what they were doing. But even if they didn't, as you can see, we can stabilize the film, we can sharpen it, we can correct exposure errors that were made 50 years ago. This is just the beginning, because artificial intelligence is already, people are working on, being able to enhance film like that. And my personal view is that we'll see like 8mm film being transformed into something equivalent of at least standard video, if not high definition.
Really?
That'd be amazing.
Because they will use computers to work out what the image should have been.
Should be, yeah, with the dots and stuff. Wow.
There we go.
I mean, I already, I already do that to a certain extent. Just a bit of water here. In that most 8mm cine runs at 16 or 18 frames a second, but video here is 25 frames. It states it's 30. And so to get video running at the right speed and not have people look like Charlie Chaplin, you have to create another 5 or 7 frames a second. Now, you used to do that by either repeating them, which made it jerky, or you mixed the frame, which made it blurred. Now the computer works out the difference between 2 frames and creates that frame. And so you get a much smoother, much sharper image at the right speed.
So, I mean, does that? I mean, I know from my own personal experience, like I use the word a lot, the word rendering. Anyone's ever done any videoing will know what I mean by that. And one of the things that takes so much time actually is that. So when you're doing something like that, where it's basically having to work out missing frames, I mean, the rendering must take ages to do something like that.
No, you don't render it at all.
Really?
No.
Wow.
The computer works in real time. And you're quite right. In the old days, you'd render it, and then you think, I need to change a frame, and you'd have to re-render the whole thing again. It was an absolute nightmare. But if the computer slows down, if you've got like 3 or 4 pieces of video and sound and a commentary and whatever, and it's kind of having a bad hair day with that clip, then yes, you can render it, and that takes a very short time. But generally speaking, you can work on a timeline with things like speed adjustments and color correction and so on, and you don't have to render.
So, I mean, obviously mentioning, you were saying about the different frame rates here, Mike has actually asked another question. So presumably with the difference of 5 frames again, so if you've got something that's sort of 15 or 16 frames a second, and you've got to convert it to the American system, obviously, which is NTSC, and sort of 30 frames a second, I mean, presumably it's that same process, is it, to sort of do the conversion from UK to US?
Well, not in the same way, no. It's a different process, but certainly, yes, you do have to convert, and ideally you don't want to do that. So because my main market is in the UK, Europe, Australia, places like that, then I work generally in PAL, although some of the programs I've got, the Japanese ones, the 707 Skyward program, that's in NTSC. The problem with the 2 formats is that although an NTSC DVD will play on a PAL machine, in America, NTSC machines won't play PAL DVDs. So you generally find in America that they have a different set of standards, different gallons, different measurements, whatever. I'm sure it's not
good old US.
In the land of the free. But, it kind of works out that way.
Yeah. So before I get told off, we probably want to go back to aviation, I suppose.
I know
I'm finding this fascinating, but it's probably only me that's loving this sort of geeky.
So we've got another piece of footage that Matt's going to play out in just a second, Howard. This is of the Alitalia, the MD-11. Now, if you want to run us through this footage, Matt's going to play it. So
if I can kind of cue that up.
There we go.
Okay, before you start, are you starting it now? Or?
Yeah, we'll start.
Carry on.
If you can hold it.
Yeah, we'll hold it. Yeah, come on.
So where I am, I'm standing on the balcony of a block of residential flats. I can see through a gap in another building a plane approaching, but I will have no time to start the camera when it comes around the corner to do the right-hand turn onto the runway at Kai Tak. So I have to guess where the plane's going to appear, start the camera, and as soon as the plane comes into shot, move the camera, hopefully in synchronization with the aircraft. Well, judge for yourself how it went, but do stay on to the end because the landing is quite something.
Okay, so here we go. Look, so talk us through this.
Right. Okay, the plane's coming. Here we go. Right,
wow.
I've got it, and that's pretty good. If you look at the way that we've got the plane's now too big, so we're moving on to the nose. We're going to allow that to track through the camera, so we get there, and we're going to hold on the tail while the plane angle changes, and now we've got the whole plane. Now it's getting into some kind of crosswind here, and it's just going and going and going, and you see the left-hand main undercarriage leg hit the right-hand edge of runway marking. The plane is only on the runway because it's going almost sideways.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the A380 footage we had a few weeks back.
The
crosswind landing
where it was a bit unpleasant.
Yeah,
absolutely. But is it Kai Tak? That's
closed now.
Yeah, that's right.
Me and Owen flew into Kai Tak.
Oh, you did, didn't you? In the simulator,
yeah.
In a 737.
In a 737-800,
yeah. As you do. Yeah, I don't think it was quite as good a landing as that, to be fair, but it was nevertheless a landing. Yeah.
I mean, people talk about, you could look out the window and see into people's living rooms and so on. And if you were flying Mandarin Airlines, you probably could. But it wasn't that close. But it was quite an amazing thing. And I did go in there on the flight deck, the A340, which was fun. But at the same time, there was a spare captain who was being very helpful and pointing things out to me.
Right.
So I'm trying to film not once in a lifetime, but a very rare opportunity with somebody's finger that keeps getting into shot.
Yeah.
So,
well, he's pointing things out to you.
I just remembered, actually, that I was in the jump seat, and I'd had to get out of the seat at some point, and it was just when we were going to touch down, I realised I hadn't strapped myself back in.
Oh.
So I'm filming through the windscreen, and bracing myself with the sort of balls of my feet to keep my back in the seat for when we actually touch down and decelerate. But I managed to do that, and this is the first time I've told the crew. So.
Absolutely.
So we've got a question from the chat room again, Howard, from Mark Harvey. He's asking, have you done much with military aircraft?
The only thing, actually, one of the reasons I got into this was because I got so fed up with the fact that you cannot fly a Spitfire without an orchestra, according to the BBC, which is not possible. Yeah. So someone very kindly got me access to Bournemouth Airport during the Bournemouth Air Show, and I made a DVD which is called Spitfires to 737s on sale at the moment, and that has the aircraft preparing for the show. So I've got two things actually. This one's got some, though I say it myself, some lovely stuff of Spitfires and Hurricane just starting up on the tarmac. I'm filming the whole startup process, taxiing out, taking off. We've got the red arrows coming by about 30 feet away. The Lancaster, it was in that little clip you saw earlier on. That came from there. The other thing I did, I filmed there was a 50s air show at Coventry, and that's got Spitfires, Mustangs, a Sabre, lovely shot of an Anson coming into land there. But air shows, military air shows, or civil air shows for that matter, are very complex things to do. You need lots of people, and there's quite a lot of competition to do that. And it's not something that floats my boat as much as the civil side.
Yeah, actually, in the chat room here, Richard Anderson is saying, how true, BBC ruin everything with incessant music. Give me a Merlin engine any day.
Yeah. One of the reasons is that when the cameramen go out without a separate sound recorders, they don't have a wing gag on their camera microphone.
Of course, yeah.
Well, as far as I've seen. I mean, I used to use a fairly massive camera, which now, in fact, my phone has a better video definition than the camera. It shows how things have gone. But one of the things was to have a massive, fluffy cover on the microphone. So
the old windsock, as we call them here.
Yeah.
Actually, on the question of quality, as in picture quality, Micah's main man Micah's just said, have you been able to clear things up to the point of HD or 4K resolution with any of the film that you get?
I presume this is where this whole sort of like artificial intelligence thing sort of comes in, really.
Well, I think that will go. That's more about changing the image as opposed to the definition of the image. I don't actually transfer the cinefilm to what is in effect a digital camera tape, or these days a chip. That's done by a specialist company using a telecine machine, which does that transfer. And they transfer to high definition video.
Wow.
But having said that, the image itself, what you're looking at is a piece of 50-year-old plastic that is literally 8 millimeters by 8 millimeters. That's got the image on it. And so there are limitations at the moment as to the level of definition you can get. But obviously, the closer the image is to the camera, the better. I do master in HD because we produce DVDs at the moment. I haven't got into Blu-ray. You actually they convert that to standard definition for DVDs. But
so Richard,
I work in HD.
Richard Adams is asking, and these are a couple of my favourite piston or prop aircraft, as I call.
Yeah.
Do you have any Britain Norman Islander or Trilander footage?
No, no one has ever asked me for that.
Well, the Trilander is good because that's a 3-engine prop. So.
I did. There is some on one of the DVDs, but I wouldn't pretend that I've done any kind of great study of that. Light aircraft don't have the same appeal for our customers as airliners, and although the Trilander isn't by any definition a light aircraft, it's down that end of the scale a bit. So no. Not really. What was the other aircraft? So I do better with that.
It was the.
It's a 3. It's got the Islander and the Trilander. The 3. It was kind of like the DC-10 of the prop aircraft.
How true.
Had the second engine.
The noise of a prop engine is like nothing. It's just there's something quite magical about that. It's just sort of like what I call sort of basics. Do you know what I mean with the prop engine?
Yes.
Never mind this jet rubbish.
But I'll tell you, you get that with jet engines. If you stand someone in a field and start up a Rolls-Royce RB211 engine, I think most aviation buffs would know an RB211 engine on full power.
That's true.
Yeah.
So we're going to start to wrap things up now, Howard. Just a couple of questions left. So the first one then is: are there any sort of special, I was going to say special spoilers. Any DVDs that are in the process of being made? Any sort of quick hints as to what we can look forward to?
Yeah, I just finished the TriStar, and if that continues to sell as well as it is at the moment, I intend to do 1 or possibly 2 DVDs on the 747 Classic. And also maybe one on the DC-10. I would like a bit more cinefilm, please. Send it in. But I'm about 80% of the way through a new Classic Airliner Collection DVD. That will be the 3rd of those. And I'm hoping we'll release that in the first quarter of next year.
Awesome. So we have got another bit of footage to play out.
Absolutely.
And this is one of my other favourite aircraft because I flew on one of these many years ago as a child with Air Malta. And this is the Boeing 707. So if you want to watch this...
Before you do that, I've got a question for you.
Okay, far away.
what would you use to clean that engine you can see on the screen now if it had some mild corrosion?
I'd say WD-40, but maybe not that. Yeah, absolutely.
No. You would fire crushed walnut shells at it.
Really?
Yep.
Really?
And on that note, I think we'll play the footage.
We didn't actually do that, but we got as close as the guy with a container full of walnut shells, and for health and safety reasons, we couldn't work out how to, because this is done out this is on the Australian Air Force Air Base. Yeah. They couldn't work out how to sort of tie him to something and get him close enough to the engine, which has to be running in order to fire the walnut shells through it. But if you think about a walnut shell, they're very hard, very sharp, and they burn. So you can...
Yeah.
I don't know if you thought of that.
Tony S suggested that as it's very good at cleaning up 2 penny pieces, maybe Coca-Cola might be a good way of cleaning the
Possibly,
engine.
Yeah.
But, I don't
anyway,
think
what
a
you
lot
can
left
see is the first engine
run. We'll run that VT.
This is from 707 Skyward.
There we go. Oh, listen to that noise. Let's appreciate some of that noise.
Ignition.
So just out of curiosity, there, what's the because obviously the cowling was off there. Was it being maintained at that point, or
what had happened was the guy in the UK was maintaining engines for old 707s, including the RAFs, and so he knew when they were going to sell it. They sold the engines from it, so when we went to pick it up, it had no engines. And he took out some engines from an ex-NEA 707, I think it was 707, and hung them on this, and so they had to be flight tested, and then we flew back via the Maldives and Cairo. This is the landing into Cairo.
Wow.
That DVD technically is the most advanced I've ever done. The editing, I look at it now and I can't work out how I did various bits of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, presumably when you're doing the filming of these things, is it one camera and you just sort of do one
shot? I had another cameraman with me, and so for example, there you had me outside filming the engine start up. And then he was inside in the cockpit filming the guys filming the dials and so on. So we then put that together, and very difficult once they've started one engine to know which one they're starting next, because it's so noisy.
Yeah, I bet.
And there are no props going around. This is not fair.
Yeah, but, indeed.
That was good fun. Good fun.
So yes, unfortunately we've got to wrap things up now, Howard. But it's been absolutely fantastic. I need you, please, to give yourself a massive plug.
Give yourself a massive plug.
Tell how they can get onto your website, how they get the brochures and things. Just tell them a bit about yourself and how they get hold of your wonderful DVDs. Carlos is going to be your glamorous model with the various DVDs now. So here we go.
Okay. Well, the key thing is our website, which is www.avionvideo.com. So that's AVION, video, one word, .com. You can order online, you can pay with PayPal, you can pay with credit cards. We send anywhere in the world, very, very competitive rates. We send by airmail or first-class post in the UK, normally within 24 hours. And each order will have a printed catalogue like the one you've seen on the screen. But all the information's online, and if you go to the website, you can watch video clips from each DVD, and normally about 30 or 40 still shots from the program.
Seriously, guys, I mean, Carlos, the reason why Howard is here is because Carlos has been a massive fan of Howard's work for many, many years, and he nearly wet himself when his TriStar DVD arrived, ladies and gentlemen.
I was actually saying to Howard yesterday on the phone, I've only watched this DVD 4 times.
Only 4? I'm amazed.
4.
Yeah. Well, look, Howard, thank you so very much for giving up your evening to join us. That is
you're very welcome.
Where, unfortunately, we have to bring the show to a close. If you want to get in touch with our show, it is www.playback.com. planetalkinguk.com. It's facebook.com/planetalkinguk, and of course it's at Twitter. So our Twitter handle is at planetalkinguk. And of course, please do send in your audio, video, even textual feedback. We don't mind how you do it. Our email address for the show is podcast@planetalkinguk.com.
Yeah, and that is where we're going to bring the show to a close. What we are going to say again, a massive, massive thanks to Howard for joining us tonight. Howard, it's been an absolute pleasure.
A real honour. Thank you very much
to you.
And thoroughly enjoyed it.
And I can't express enough to all the listeners of the show, whether it be on the audio download version or on the live show that we're doing right now on YouTube. You know, if you're into your commercial aviation, you love your old school heritage kind of, you know, the older aircraft. You know, take yourselves over to Avion and check out some of the DVDs.
Avionvideo.co.uk.
Avionvideo.com.
Avionvideo.com. What did I say?
You said
Did I? I'm so sorry. I've got it right in front of me and I still got it wrong.
Oh, yes. So take yourselves over to avionvideo.com, and there's a whole list on the website there which you'll be able to see, including the TriStar Memories DVD.
Indeed. So that's it, guys. That's where we bring episode 189 to
Thanks
a close.
everyone in the chat room for joining us.
Thanks to everyone for joining us, and we'll see you all next week for we don't quite know we don't know when it's going to be. So watch social media feeds basically, because me and Carlos are at different ends of the world, so we have no idea. But watch the social media feeds for when our show will be next week. But from all of us here in the studio and around the world, take care, everybody. Bye bye.